man, and I mean on your station.
My life is so beautiful. You know, say yeah, it's all about bread, man.
And I say this is the original Chronic saying. You're tuned into the original bread man. Keep it locked. Rastafari said that. Ease out.
Yeah, you don't know this is a girl bad girl Cecile representing for bread man.
All who genuine bread man, reroute them. And all who are touch, we mute them. Them no smoke, them no sick, them no have pink eye, but them yeah in red. Yeah man, bread man. We're better than everything. All stead man.
Alright guys, welcome back to the vlog. I'm a little late. I took a little break. I gave y'all a little week off, but I'm back. You guys seem to love the history stuff. I don't know. This is supposed to be a lifestyle vlog, show you different things about my life, but I'm getting a lot of feedback about likes with the history type stuff. So I'm gonna hit you with a little bit more history. Right now I'm in the Bronx, still in the Bronx. You know, I live in the Bronx. So I'm gonna try and cover a lot of stuff in the Bronx and then start venturing out like into the other boroughs in history. I want to go to Manhattan real soon. But like a lot of things, a lot of the little stories that I said in the Bronx that I mentioned before in previous vlogs, I want to go back and hit them. I don't just want to have them lingering there. I did mention one more slave cemetery that I did find. So I'm going to try and go back to that soon. I also mentioned that whole crime of the century. You see that one now? I have a lot of friends that I've told that story to about that I wanted to tell you guys, and a lot of people have been coming back to me saying, why you haven't done that one yet? So I think I'm going to do that one today. And I even had a subscriber reach out to me and told me about the same story that I'm talking about, so that some people do know about it, but I'm not sure everybody knows about it. So I'm in the Wakefield area of the Bronx right now, and I think I'm gonna hit on that. I really wanted to go do some exercise. I was working through the night. I'm not even really exercise code, but like I said, as far as you moving around, you getting the blood flowing, that's good. Just don't try to do what I've been doing, laying up in the house too much and, you know, on that computer. I still got to be on the computer, but you got to move around, man. You got to move around nowadays. I really see it. I'm starting to see a lot of people exercising, so that's a good thing. But we're gonna take a little trip. I'm gonna go to a location where I can start the story, because it's an important location in the story, and then we'll start it up. All right. So I'll see you guys in a few. Yeah, Boar's Head, the paint job, like when I had my bread route, I tried to look into getting the Boar's Head route, and I found out the paint job on the Boar's Head trucks, they wanted $33,000. I think that was 10 years ago, like $33,000 for the paint job. And that's because actually the logo for the Boar's Head it's actually gold leaf, they said. So I think it's like 14 karat gold.
Wow.
So wow. That's maybe why you never see Boar's Head trucks just parked on the street overnight like other work trucks. Because if enough people know that, they probably scrape that gold right off.
Damn right.
So yeah, as you can see off to my left right here, that's Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx. This is a very old cemetery. There's like old governors of New York, old mayors of New York City buried in there. Sure, there's a lot of famous people in there. There's a lot of history in
Cecilia Cruz.
Cecilia Cruz?
Yeah, she was buried.
My camera woman said that Cecilia Cruz is buried over there too. I'm sure there's a lot of people buried over there. But story now. We're gonna go back to 1930s, almost 100 years ago. Back then, this area of New York was mainly, the Bronx was mainly populated by a lot of like Germans, a lot of Europeans that migrated after, Ellis Island is in Manhattan. So this is after that. A lot of Europeans in this area, mainly Germans for some reason. I'm not sure why, but this area, the cemetery was still here. This street wasn't really this busy. I'm sure this was like dirt roads at that time. 1930s. I don't even think the I-95 was built yet. So this is the 87. I don't believe that was built yet. Let me turn right here. So you can still see the cemetery follows alongside right here. This is a new development in the cemetery because I believe the cemetery is closed. There's no more space to bury anybody, so they built like these mausoleums to get new burial space, and I believe those are probably filled right now or already sold. So this is a very old cemetery. So back in the 1930s, this area right here, see, as you can see, shoulder to the right, all this woods, it was all wooded up like this.
So how come there was no spots over here? Who said there was no more burial spots over here?
Actually, when my mother died, they also took me. But before my mother died, I heard that they ran out of spots. When they first started building those mausoleums that we passed back there, that's when around the time when my father died. And the lady, I didn't even inquire about over here with my father, because I knew that my father wanted to be buried up there, and my mother was planning that mainly. But that's when we met that lady, Patrice Miller, the funeral director, and she told me first that they're building these mausoleums because there's no more space. They have space, but I guess they closed their cemetery a long time ago. You see, on this end of the cemetery, some like big family plots, and even down by the entrance of this cemetery is like where the crematory is, and some of those mausoleums there, they look like houses. Talking, they have like landscaping and hedges and everything. You can tell it costs a pretty penny to build them.
Right.
But back to that story though, the story I was telling you, okay. All right guys, so let's get back to it. The story is about Charles Lindbergh. Now for those who don't know who Charles Lindbergh is, Charles Lindbergh was the first man to do a transatlantic flight. He flew across the Atlantic for the first time. So he went down in history for that. So back in the 1920s, I believe he accomplished that in 1920. I'm not sure, so I'm not gonna, but it's in the 1920s. Do your research, because I'm doing everything off the head right now. Just telling the story. So Charles Lindbergh, his wife, she was also a pilot. Relatively famous, because especially during that time, because aviation was a new thing. So being a pilot was like, wow. And Charles Lindbergh at that time, he having that record for the first man to fly across the Atlantic, excuse me. He was kind of like, I'm trying to say, what kind of, who could be the equivalent of like Charles Lindbergh back then, right now? He was the man that everybody was talking about. Everybody if the Inquirer existed back then, he would be on the front page. He's the one. So when they both got married, that was the talk of the world, not just of this country. And then they had their first baby. That was the talk of the world. Everybody, and the baby's name was Charles Lindbergh Jr. Everybody called him, I believe, Little Chad. And Charles Lindbergh Jr. was like the baby of the 1930s. Early 1930 incident happens. The Lindbergh family wake up to find that the baby Lindbergh is missing. Story goes all across the world. Everybody's wondering what happened. Let's just stop for a second so I can really talk. So the baby turns up missing one morning. Everybody's wondering what happened. Investigation starts. The story goes all across the world. Everybody's wondering what happened. They find a ladder on the back of the house. Charles Lindbergh lived in New Jersey at that time. And they found a ladder on the back of the house up to the window of where the baby's nursery was. No trace of the baby, no trace of who took the baby, no links to who might have kidnapped the baby. So there's a search going all through Jersey looking for the baby. Nobody's finding out. Then they're contacted by someone that said they have the baby and they want a ransom for the baby. Lindbergh family is very distraught. They want to get back the baby. The authorities is working on it, and I believe even the FBI is involved by this point. But the reason why I started at this location by the cemetery is because this was the location that the person who called them, who contacted them, basically, and wanted a ransom. This was the ransom pickup point. So this is why I'm gonna come back in the nighttime and show you a little clip, probably around here, of how it looked in the night, how it looks in the nighttime now. And it's dark in the nighttime now, even though we do have some street lights.
Move it out.
Even though we do have some street lights.
But this one.
But back then, I'm sure there were no street lights here. Like I said, there was mainly dirt roads in this part of New York and the Bronx back then. This was the location that they came and they were supposed to drop off the ransom. This ransom actually happened. This ransom exchange actually happened. Can't even say an exchange because the person didn't have the baby to exchange at that point. They wanted the money first to secure that they will be able to get away, and then they'll give the location of the baby afterwards. They were able to pick up the money here. One gentleman got away with the money, never came back with any kind of correspondence about where the baby was. So they're still in the newspaper. Money's gone, still no baby. You know what I'm saying? Story goes on where they start investigating. The FBI gets really deep into it now, and they start investigating, trying to find out who is this person. Of course, the money that they gave up for the ransom was Charles Lindbergh's money, but they made sure they went to the bank, and it was gold notes back then. And they actually marked these gold notes so that if they were ever used, they could actually trace back who's the person using them. Hopefully the person using them at a location that it can be traced. And they were dependent on that. Also, the ladder that they found on the back of the house, that ladder wasn't a ladder that was store-bought. They investigated the ladder and they found out the ladder was actually a ladder that somebody built themselves. They bought lumber and nailed the lumber together and built the ladder. So that's how they actually even got to the second floor of the building in Jersey that Charles Lindbergh lived in. I'll show you a picture of it right here. And was able to get the baby out of the window. So they investigated the lumber of the ladder, which is something that you could also trace because lumber is also stamped by the manufacturer and with little serial numbers, so you could actually trace to where the lumber was shipped to and where it was sold from. So that was the only lead that the FBI really had, other than the money, which the money was nothing unless somebody spent it and some kind of merchant would say, hey, you know what, I found this gold note, you want to look into it, which that's a long shot. So I'm going to cut it right here because where they investigated the lumber that made the ladder also traced back to somewhere close around here. Like we said, this is the first location. Ransom was picked up. I'm going to see you at the second location. Let's go.
These are houses. Why do people get buried in houses? We don't want that. This is, I mean, what is the deal with that?
These are some big, yeah.
These are castles.
I'm telling you, when I went in there for my mother's funeral, look at that. Some of them look at the size of that look like 2 stories.
Yeah, it doesn't look like.
It looks like it has a second floor. Wow.
This is serious. This is like, I guess, what is the wish of being buried in a mausoleum?
I guess it's a stature thing.
I guess. That's
You
a bit much.
You got me in my history mode, but I guess some people, like how they say, you can't bring the money with you. Mm-hmm. Some people want to show, well, I had the money when I was here, because look how big my gravesite is.
Well, who's seeing that? Like,
Then, some
the
of
people you're buried
And
around?
some of it is also legacy, where
Okay.
it's like a family plot where those mausoleums could fit the whole family.
Okay, well, that I could understand.
So it's like a space. If there's you, your wife and husband, 3 kids, big mausoleum with 5 slots.
Okay.
There's some of them with even more. Because in Valhalla, I've seen them with like 20 slots.
Yeah.
Big sculptures in the front, eagles.
Okay. All right. What are they doing?
Then the
Widening
obelisk
the
too,
road?
because I've seen you see some of them with obelisks in front of them. Even some of the gravestones are shaped like obelisks. Obelisks come back from Egyptian times.
You do? I've never seen one. Well, I don't be going into. I don't think I've ever been to a burial over here.
And there's meanings behind the obelisk. Some places they're like it's like a phallic symbol. But almost all the obelisks you see, it's usually on a man's tomb. You never see it on a woman's tomb.
It is? We never see a woman's tomb. I don't pay attention to tombs.
But even the there's
nowhere.
modern obelisks in the world, like the Washington Monument. That's an obelisk.
Yeah, that's true.
They're not gonna put any monument to a woman and put an obelisk. Why is that? Guys, like I said, if you have any ideas that you want me to go hit on, just like people reached out to me to do this one, just hit me in the comment section. Just tell me. Tell me, would you like me to, if you know a story in the Bronx that you want me to research and then try to do a story on it, just hit me up with that. If you see me do something that you would like to see more of, hit me in the comment section and tell me about that. I want to do more consistent uploads, so that's why I said I don't want to really like put myself in one direction where it's just only history. It's different things. The exercise thing, we'll come back and forth to that, because I'm going to be doing my exercise. I'm not going to be bringing the camera out there every day I'm exercising. I just showed you that. Maybe I can motivate some people to like go out there and start getting the blood flowing like I was. You know what I'm saying? And another passion of mine, which I don't think I've done any videos of yet, so you know what, the next video is like informing you about like certain things. I want to do a video informing you about like certain rights you might need to know, like law, on the law side, because I'm a lover of law. I love history, but I love law too.
Yeah, that would be a good video.
Yeah.
That's definitely a good idea.
New York just legalized marijuana. What are the questions? In the comment section, hit me right now. As far as the legalization of marijuana, what are the questions that you guys would like me to hit on?
Yeah, do that. Bring up bills they put in place in terms of even with the gun reform stuff. Bring up things like that, because a lot of people, I don't know. I know Biden was big on that shit. And he signed certain things into law. A lot of people don't know that, yet now he's talking some other shit from what I understand on the news. Seems like he was, to change the law. Why? I understand it's monetary. I understand these corporations have much power in terms of everything, but why is it that now they'd rather train teachers to defend themselves? Which, okay, I get it. But
to defend against like these
school shootings,
Oh, okay.
as opposed to saying, like, if you could buy alcohol and cigarettes at 21, you could access a gun at 18. Why can't move up the age limitation for that? Why is it that they're not willing to change that?
Yeah,
but they're willing to train you to shoot.
The Second Amendment is a right, but it doesn't mean that it should be a right for every
Everybody
person
to get just freely be able to get gun. That little kid, 18. Like
There's
you
nothing
had.
wrong with even giving you that right with like certain safety restrictions. Like we have to make sure that you're mentally stable to have a gun because
Even that.
you're holding people's life in your hands literally now.
Yeah.
You can't give that power to anybody. So
You shouldn't. If I can't drink and I can't smoke legally until I'm at a certain age, why is it I could get a gun?
That, oh, that's not your right. This isn't a constitution. This
To
is
bear arms.
constitutional right to bear arms. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So a lot of people's gonna object to certain things like that. This is the intersection of Webster Avenue in the Bronx and Gun Hill Road. Right here where the Chevy dealership you see, La Source Chevy, that was actually a lumber yard. And they actually traced the lumber that was used to make the ladder that went to the second floor by where the baby's nursery was, back to this lumber yard. Luckily for the Lindbergh family and for the FBI, the owner of this lumber yard, they said that he was known to keep meticulous records. So he actually wrote receipts down with your name on it and your address on it. And he was able to trace back the receipt of the pieces of lumber that he sold from the serial numbers and everything back to a person that lived in the Bronx close by here. So that was the first real lead that the FBI was able to get. And the second lead was in a location very close to here too. So I'm gonna make a left right here at Webster and Gun Hill. So now this intersection we're coming up on, where you can see the train tracks, that's White Plains Road and Gun Hill Road. And in that intersection, you can see right now, there's actually a BP gas station and a mobile gas station on each side. There was a gas station located in this area. And that gas station actually reported to the FBI a note, which was traced back to be one of the gold notes from the ransom. So this was the second lead that the FBI got on who this person is that's responsible for the kidnapping of the Lindbergh child. You can see the gas stations right here. So in this area, there was some gas station that was able to get one of the bills that was traced back to the ransom money. So the name that they got, the gentleman that they were able to trace who bought the lumber, and the gentleman that bought the gas happened to be the main link of how they found out an address to go find the person who kidnapped the baby. Now, the address of where he lived is also in the Bronx. And that's where the whole story takes to like the climax of the story. Now, I want to really paint a picture. I remember, if you guys are not old enough, but if you're old enough to remember in the 90s when the whole OJ incident happened, how everybody around the world was talking about OJ, everybody was talking about that trial afterwards. That's what this turned into. It turned into a media frenzy. Once it came out that the FBI found a location of where the individual lived, and shortly after that they were able to apprehend him. Some stories depicted where he was apprehended at the house, at his home. I believe there's even some indications of the story if you watch the movie Hoover that depicts the biography of J. Edgar Hoover. They also mentioned this story in that movie, and they kind of depicted in the movie where they arrested this gentleman blocks away from his house, but they showed that he lived on 222nd in the Bronx. So I'm gonna drive over to 222nd to show you like the main area that they went to go try and apprehend this individual. All right, I'm here by 222nd and Teeman Avenue. This was the location that they traced, like I said, the lumber that they found from the lumber yard, from the receipt from the lumber owner, traced back to an individual, and the money from the ransom at the gas station was traced back to the same individual. This individual's name was Bruno Richard Altman, and he lived at, I'm not going to give you the address, I'm going to give you close with, like, he lived on 222nd. You do your own research. It's public record. Like I also referred to the movie J. Edgar Hoover. The address is also stated in that movie. But this house across the street, you probably could see the address when we look at the house. But take a look at the house. This was the house that was owned by Bruno Richard Altman in 1930. FBI came to this location, try and apprehend Altman. He wasn't home. His wife was home, but he wasn't home. His wife, after them questioning the wife gave a location to where Altman was, and that's where they subsequently caught Altman. That location is still in the Bronx also, so that's going to be the last location for this video, where I'm going to show you where they apprehended Altman. I'm going to wrap up the story and tell you exactly how the story closed out, if Altman was convicted of, and how they proved what happened with the baby, if the baby was retrieved or everything. Just follow me to this last location and let me wrap up the story. Okay, so now we're coming up on the Dye Avenue train station, guys. This is the final location that I really wanted to bring you to, and I wanted you to take notice to, like, this building right here where you see pharmacy. This whole building right here, they actually had like a little betting shop, pharmacy right here. Yeah, they had like a little betting shop right there, and this is where they was actually able to apprehend Mr. Richard Altman. They found him right here, and he was arrested, and then they brought him in for questioning. They got a lot of information on. The only information that they weren't able to get is the information about the money, the ransom money. They was able to retrieve, I believe, like half of it, but there's still some of that ransom money that was never found to this day. As far as the baby, unfortunately, they found out that the baby died from their initial night that the kidnapping occurred. They was actually able to find the remains of the baby, not from him, but someone found the remains of the baby in the woods close to the Lindbergh's address, the family address. And it seemed like the remains of the baby was more than a year old in those bushes, so it seemed that the baby died from that night, and he left the baby's body in the woods and called the Lindberghs for the ransom throughout this whole time, knowing that the baby was dead and was still in the woods in Jersey by the Lindberghs' home. So there was a trial, I believe. He was convicted in 1931. No, he was convicted in 35. February of 1935. And then I believe he was executed. He was found guilty, and he was executed on April 3rd, 1936, I believe. So that's a story about Richard Altman, or Bruno Richard Altman, the kidnapper of the Lindbergh baby, and he actually lived in the Bronx at that location I showed you on 222nd, and he was apprehended here on Dye Avenue. So some history stories are good, some of them are kind of solemn like this. It's not a very positive outcome, but there's just a true story of what happened. And as you can see from like even the pictures that I've showed you, there's newspaper articles, this story had like the whole world's eye on it. So many countries around the world was constantly following the story to find out what happened to the Lindbergh baby, and it was so unfortunate to find out that the baby wasn't able to be recovered alive, and the fact that the baby was dead throughout the whole time. But guys, I'm gonna try and keep on giving you content like this. I know you guys like the history. Like I said, I want to mix it up a little. I still have some more history stuff, but the next video, I think I'm gonna give it some informative thing. I'm thinking more along the lines of the new legalization of marijuana in New York. I think that's gonna be my next video. I've been thinking about that for the past couple of weeks, so I'm gonna put something together, try to make it entertaining for you, and I'm gonna see you in the next video. All right, guys, please hit me with that like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, because that's the only way you're gonna see my next vlogs. And I'll see you next time. Peace.
Bread man, make myself your life is not a dead man.